Hello and welcome to Hare in the Hawthorn. We are back. We are back. It's been a while. It's 2024 now, and the last time we got together to do a Hare in the Hawthorn seems like 1999 or something. So my name's Kate Ray. I'm your host, and as always, I have my Debbie McGee to my Paul Daniels, or my Starsky to my Hutch. We have Neil Rushton. How are you doing?
I'm okay, Kate. Like you say, it seems a long time. We'll explain to the viewers. We're sorry for the absence. It's actually all Kate's fault, but she'll have to explain herself on that. But it's good to be back, and this is just going to be a sort of short one before we get going on the new season. Can we call it a new season?
Oh yes, we're American.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the new season of podcasts, which hopefully people will enjoy. So why haven't we been around for months?
Well, we both got abducted by various different fairy types and taken under a hill, and it was only a couple of days for us, and we're slightly hungover from the experience, but now we're back. I wish it was. This is going to be a slight rant, and I'm ranting for a reason, and that's because I've had a few regular viewers message me and say, "Are you guys still alive?" So I think it's only fair that I kind of explain briefly about what's happened. So a certain company who let's not give it its name, but it sounds like Kurgin. Who
No, no,
are
just name them and shame them. They deserve it.
they do bloody deserve it. So I moved house before Christmas and was promised internet access on the 28th of November and didn't get it at all for months and months and months. So the box went in, the box was flashing and saying, we're all ready to go, but I've had absolutely zero internet for months, which has been highly frustrating, but has meant that me and Neil couldn't get together and do any Hare in the Hawthorn at all over that period of time, or I couldn't get on and do podcasts for other people who I'd been asked to do um, over that period of time. So massive apologies. And I did say, I think in one of them briefly that oh no, I think I said to a regular watcher that Neil was also in hibernation, and to poke the bear in midwinter is not a good idea. So we've both had a period of time away from the screen, but we are super glad to be back. And yeah, I've genuinely missed it, Neil. I've really missed sort of just getting together and I've missed guests as well, and yourself.
Yeah, thank you. You remember to put that in at the last minute, didn't you?
I do.
And you. Yeah, all right.
And you, and you.
Yeah, no, I have been hibernating. It's not all down to Kate. It's and internet woes. I have. I don't actually deal very well with the winter. It's certainly the last few years has been a bit tough, actually, for various reasons. And this winter, certainly where I live in the northwest, it seems to have been raining every single day. There's no sunshine, and I'm just going to hibernate. This has happened since November. Now it's what, middle of February, and it's just yeah. No, I'm going to hibernate, and I'll come out like a spring bear. I know it's not spring yet, but I'm ready to go, and I am looking forward to. I mean, we've got a lot to chat about. I mean, today's going to be a bit of a short one, but we'll be back on course, talking about what we love and what we're passionate about. And we do have some guests lined up. We've got no dates firmed up for them yet, but we do have a number of guests, some for the first time, some reappearing guests. And so I think everyone is going to enjoy it. I hope so anyway.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, one thing that happened to me not having the internet, and I've just got to mention this, is I started reading again, which was brilliant. And there's a couple of books that we'll talk about on a later show that I've been reading. One of them particularly significant. It's really good, and got affiliation with a good friend of ours, Dr. Simon Young, who'll be talking about in a little while as well. So maybe some more book reviews coming up in the future, and letting you know what we're reading, what's good, what's not so good, what's worth buying, etc. And on that note, Since we've been off air, Dr. Simon Young has published the second of the fairy census. And these are in book form, and there is 3 copies of this. There is Fairy Census Part 1, which is Britain and Ireland, Part 2, which is Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and the rest of the world. Sorry, that's Part 3, and Part 2 is the United States. It is a mammoth bit of work this time. It's a mammoth bit of work. And I know Neil and I have been cajoling, I suppose, and ribbing Simon about getting it done, and come on, you can work a little bit faster than that, and that kind of thing. And just as a bit of fun. And he kind of gets back to us and says, I'm trying my hardest. And then he brings out this 3-volume census this time, which is pretty magnificent. So we both received our copies, didn't we?
Yeah, it's a magnificent piece of work. And obviously the hard copies you have to buy from, the website of your choice, but it's also freely available.
Yes.
I think it's amazing that Simon does this. The amount of work that he's put into it, he deserves some reward. And I know writers these days, apart from a few of the elite writers, well, they're sold as being elite, J.K. Rowling and Neil Gaiman and these sorts who are millionaires from writing. Most people who write, as I'm sure many viewers will know, earn pittance.
Yes.
And it's a lot of work. And what Simon has put together, we've seen the process over several years since the first census came out in 2017. And my goodness, I dread to think of how many hours, days, and weeks, months that he has put into this piece of work. And then he makes it freely available online. So you can get the whole fairy census in PDF. If you go to the Fairy Investigation Society website, you can just download it. And it's obviously searchable for anything, extremely useful research tool. And so hats off to Dr. Simon Young. I have to admit that I've only briefly skimmed through the new census because I've been busy doing other things, which we'll talk about in a moment. But the one thing that I notice in terms of a difference between the this second census and the first one is there are a lot more long entries. People seem to have become a little bit more opened up to it, and it's all anonymous, so anyone can put it in and remain anonymous, but people seem a little bit more confident about talking in a little bit more detail about their experiences. So that's my one takeaway at the moment, but I've yet to go through it in detail, and I'll be writing an article for the blog site in the next month, maybe next month, 6 weeks. I shouldn't say that because
Yeah, you put yourself under pressure with that then.
yeah, the speed of my writing these days is
Well,
it's quite
I hate to tell you, I've kind of beat you to it, Neil. The new Haunted magazine that's coming out, it's pre-order right now. It should be out in the next couple of weeks. I did an article for the Haunted magazine about the new census, but more to do with what that means in terms of the paranormal and how useful it is as a tool, and also the way that it's collated. And having a body of work like this that's all in one place, and what that actually means and how that could help a paranormal community. So that's the perspective that I came from. So I've gone out and used the first census multiple times when giving talks or conferences. And it's a great tool. You can use it in various different ways. So for those of you who don't know, the fairy census is a documentation of real people's real experiences with fairies. So it's one place where you can log your fairy experiences. Again, it's anonymous, so people can talk about their experiences without feeling like there's any kind of retribution, or cajoling from your mates down the pub about seeing fairies. But it is really important to the community, and not just the fairy community, but the paranormal community as a whole, to have these things documented and held in one place. I think it's a very special thing. So what we thought we'd do with this is dip into it, and just every now and again we'll dip into these and give you a flavour of what's actually in the fairy census, And also for Neil and I to put our investigative hats on and have a chat about what may be happening with this particular story of an event that somebody has had, an encounter that somebody has had. So I was going to do this potluck, and I did literally as we were coming online. I flipped through it, and I was just going to pick one out at random, but one as I was flicking through stood out, and that will take us on to the second part of what we're going to be talking about today. So I'm going to read it out. You'll have to excuse my dyslexia. Being a teacher for very many years, and having dyslexia is not a good thing.
Stop making excuses. Get on with it.
I am getting on with it. So this particular entry is from England, and it's a male in the 1980s. I won't read you all the bits out to start off with. So it says, I had taken and asked for fairy folk to appear in photographs. Semi-solid fairy entities showed themselves, and most people could see them on the picture, verified as genuine by Dr. and then that name's blanked out, of the ASSAP. Only seen fairies, that's in brackets, on photos, some traditional elfin, some gnomes, plus some non-winged. Fairfield on old maps. I don't know what that means. I was seeking fairies, hallucinations with reality, hallucinations, but neurological, doesn't really know what they are. So that was him answering some of Simon's questions, which are right at the beginning of the census. So this guy had taken photographs of fairies and had asked them to appear as solid entities on photographs. Now, do we think that's possible? Do we think it's possible that fairies could appear in some kind of form on a photograph? What's your thoughts?
Well, until quite recently, I was quite dismissive of any fairy photographs, simply because I'm coming from the position that fairies in their, whatever they are, fairy type entities in their original form cannot be material, and therefore cannot appear in a photograph which is taking photographs of material reality. I guess you say you could get an infrared camera or a special type of camera which is taking pictures that we can't see, taking pictures of things we can't see. But so that's my general position. And most photographs you see of fairies are very amorphous. That can be put down to pareidolia. It can be put down to so many things that you think, well, the pictures you see of insects, they're obviously insects. And I'm always very dismissive of it. But recently, I've had to manage that a little bit in terms of me thinking they may be immaterial, incorporeal entities, but in some way and at some times they must interact with physical reality in some form, because otherwise no one would ever see fairies. There would be no visual representation of them at all. Now, I still am a firm adherent to the hypothesis that fairies are not material entities. You do not find fairy skeletons. The fairy skeletons that have been shown, that's rubbish. They don't exist. They don't exist. You do not find remnants, material remnants of fairies. But like I say, they must, at certain points, for certain reasons, I would argue very often when a person is in an altered state of consciousness for whatever reason, you can tap in to their presence. Now, if we, with our eyesight, our vision, visually and sometimes audially, can tap in to the presence of a fairy type entity, then why would it not be able to be captured on a camera as it interacts with our physical reality? So I've actually changed my mind to some extent over the last, probably only the last year or so, in that respect. So the guy who you're talking about here, it's quite unusual that someone goes out specifically asking for it to appear on a photograph rather than can you appear to me? So that's quite unusual. Um, but not having seen his photographs, I can't really make any kind of assessment on what I think of it. So
No,
that's the lowdown. I don't know whether that answers your question.
yeah, I think I'm with you to a certain extent. I mean, I think two of the encounters that I've had with fairies, the first one was very material, and I think if I could have got my hands on the little bugger, I could have picked it up, and it would have felt very real. It was literally vibrating on a dense matter level. And now, whether I could have got a photograph of it, now that's an interesting thing, isn't it? Whether they can attune their vibrational levels to go in and out of a material realm or not. Because when you look at folklore and you have tales of, fairies plaiting, the manes of horses or cobbling shoes, they have to have a density about them to be able to interact with those objects as well. So I do believe that they possibly could be captured. I do, for me, do they want to be? Probably not. And I think that when we have these very sort of amorphous type shapes, sometimes when I've seen them, I'm like you, it's very rare that I'll see a photo and just go, oh, now there's something in that. Most of the time, I just think, it's insects behaving weirdly, or, people have just captured them at that particular moment. Can they appear on camera? Now, the fact that this guy has asked for them to appear on camera. Now, if we're talking in terms of coming from a ghost hunting perspective, and when people ask for ghosts to appear on camera, there are theories about their energetic layering onto either that digital media or film, and not actually appearing in front of the lens, but interacting with the reaction or the electronics or whatever within the camera, with digitals now, or with film. So that's another theory to explore with that kind of thing, that they may not be physically in front of the lens, but they could be imprinting their energy into the process. Does that make sense?
Yes, or imprinting their energy into the consciousness of the observer, the human
Of
observer,
course, yeah.
and that somehow then manifests in a photographic film or digitally.
Yes.
So I think, as usual, my view would be that consciousness, human, perhaps animal as well, consciousness is fundamental to any type of fairy interaction or sighting. So yeah, no, I think that's a reasonable way to come at this. It would actually be interesting to see this guy's photos, because
Yes.
obviously in the census it's all just a descriptive text. But I'd like I'd like I'd like to see those photos. That would be interesting.
Yeah. I mean, if anybody out there has got any fairy photos that they'd like us to review, it's definitely something that I like doing. I like going through the trawling the internet and doing the unexplained caught on camera type thing of me going, oh no, 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 that's an insect, or oh no, 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 that's a bit of dust or whatever you. I recently came across when viewed the new property that I'm in. I took some photographs of the garden in the summer, and I'll have to show you at some point, Neil. And I was looking through them the other day of the photos of the garden to see what plants were in the garden at that particular time of year. And again, I know there's a lot of people out there that'll go orb, yeah, whatever. But there was a very large orb in the garden. And zooming in and looking around it, it's very peculiar. It's very peculiar, and it's definitely not a raindrop or a piece of dust. So yeah, I do think that there is mileage in not just shutting down on this kind of thing, isn't there? About how these things appear. I don't know where I was going with that. Do you know where I was going with that?
No idea. No,
No
but no.
idea. Shall I
But
shall I segue us nicely into the next part of this then?
well, if you're talking about fairy photographs, obviously the most famous photographs are the Cottingley photographs. So you got you segue on that, and then I'll carry on.
So one of the reasons why both myself and Neil have had other things to do is we have been asked by the lovely Simon Young to research and to write about the Cottingley fairies for a future project. And so we've been in Cottingley Fairyland for quite a while. So I think have you got some kind of picturage there? Or are we going to
Well, we may.
model?
I'm sure everyone watching this podcast knows exactly what the Cottingley fairies are, and they've seen the pictures 1,000 times. But why
I thought
don't
you
we
were going to say everybody watching this knows how rubbish we are at technology. So give me a minute.
that as well?
Oh,
Right,
there we go.
there you go. So, well, I mean, we need probably to do a full piece on Cottingley when the book comes out. When Simon's book at the end of the project comes out, it'll have all the source material in. It'll have articles by not just me and Kate. There's about 10 authors going to be writing different articles on different aspects of the Cottingley case, which is much more mysterious than just these photos. But uh, it, where was I going with that? See, we
Oh,
haven't done a
everyone,
podcast. We haven't done a
I
podcast for so long. Right, all right. Time for tea now. So, oh no, we've got to carry on. Um, the so, so obviously people know about the photographs. This is one of the youngest of the girls. The girls were called Frances and Elsie. Frances was 9 and Elsie 15 in 1917 when they took photos. This is a fake photo. Um, yeah,
don't
I'm
give the
sorry. I'm
game
sorry.
away
I'm sorry.
already.
Let's get straight into this. This is a faked photo,
No,
of
it's
which
a real photo that
they faked.
faked the
Okay, it's a
fairies.
fairy folk it's a fairy fake in the photos, and of course, without going into detail, it kind of fooled a lot of people, including Sir Arthur Conan Doyle and members of the Theosophist Society at the time who thought this was proof of fairies. And then, of course, later on, the truth came out, and Elsie had cut the fairies out of a book. Was it Queen Mary? Isn't it Queen Mary book? I can't remember the name. It's like a pictorial book in the early 20th century with pictures of fairies. She cut them out. They put them on pins, and that one was of Francis with the fairies. This one is Elsie.
I love this photo. It's
It's
lovely.
beautiful. It's beautiful. I mean, Elsie and Francis, when you, having done the research, obviously they were talking about this later on in life, throughout their lives, actually. I'll come back to that. It's quite important. And they come across as quite a pair, actually. You know,
Mm.
they come across as really interesting characters, colourful characters, let's say. So those are two of the, there's another two photos which I won't show, but there's also a fifth
Mm.
photo which was taken by Francis in 1920. So the photographs, there's three from 1917 and then two from 1920 when they took more photos. And this is the what's called the fifth photo,
It's amazing.
which is more amorphous. It's apparently Francis says she saw a bird's nest on the ground, picked up the camera, took a picture of it, and it's much more ambiguous. They obviously didn't set this one up. Now people will say that's pareidolia or it's double exposure, even though the plate was analysed and they said no, there's no double exposure, so that's weird. And so that fifth photo is a little bit more mysterious. There's lots of things going on. You could look at that picture
Mm.
for I don't know where are you seeing where I'm.
Yes. Yeah.
Look at that little fella there.
Yeah.
Obviously, these two figures here, they do look like winged fairies, but not quite.
Mm-hmm.
One of them seems to have a mushroom in their
Mushroom.
hair,
Yeah.
and there's some faces down here. There's faces up there. It's a weird one,
Yeah.
and Frances took it because she said, "Oh well, I saw my fairies, and I just click the camera," and that she stood by that till the end of her days. So those are the Cottingley photos, and my piece is looking at the role of clairvoyance clairvoyance in the Cottingley story. Clairvoyance has become a very unfashionable word, but well, it means altered state of consciousness, so you can perceive things which otherwise you can't perceive. It's as simple as that, really. And having done the research and really gone through, especially Frances's memoirs, which she wrote later based on her diary entries of the time, and she obviously has some clairvoyant ability, and she was seeing real fairies,
Mm.
often described as much more folkloric fairies than the winged fairies that we saw the pictures of. Whereas Elsie is more ambiguous about it. And later in life, she was very dismissive of it all. Did she, as the older girl, actually see these fairies, or was it just Frances? So that's interesting. And then what I've written about in the article to at some length is the visit of the clairvoyant theosophist Geoffrey Hodson in 1921, where he spent 2 weeks with the girls in the Beck and wrote a report to Arthur Conan Doyle, which was later published in The Coming of Fairies, which is Conan Doyle's book about it. And there, again, we haven't got time to go into details, but it's extremely interesting.
Mm.
Hodgson is a massively interesting character. Only 3 years before 1921, he was he was fighting as a tank commander in the First World War, and then 3 years later he's writing about the fairies.
Yeah.
And he was obviously seeing them and interacting with them, and he talks about both girls interacting with them, although Elsie would later say no, Frances say yes. And then later in life, Hodgson became very prolific writer on all sorts of subjects, from angelic kingdoms to reincarnation to and he worked with quantum physicists and anthropologists. He's an amazing character. He lived till he was almost 100.
Wow.
And his input into the Cottingley story cannot just be dismissed. Oh, he's just a nutcase from the Theosophist Society, and he was turning up, making it all up. No, 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 no. He was the real deal at
Mm.
many levels, and so that's what I was writing about. Basically, okay, they faked the pictures, but basically, and as Frances says later in life, we were just trying to show what we were seeing, what we were actually seeing.
Yeah.
We wanted to catch it on photographic plate,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's why Elsie is the artistic one made it up. That's the basic of the story. But there's so much more to it. It is so much more interesting than those 5 photos that we have.
Yeah, it's brilliant. And I mean, don't we all want to do that though? Don't we all want to prove to the rest of the world
Yeah.
what we've had experiences of? No, no matter what your weird experience is, throughout your life, there is a certain excitement about it, whether you've witnessed a UFO or seen a ghost or seen a fairy, or whatever experience you've had, just that validation of other people understanding that it is real and it is part of the makeup of our world and our universe is important. And there's such innocence about children desperately wanting adults to believe what they're going through and what they're understanding, that it there's a playfulness about them cutting out those pictures, and
Yeah.
taking those photos, but there's also a desperation for wanting for wanting the rest of the world to have to know their story and to know their interaction.
Can I just read out, because that exactly what you're saying there. This is just a little quote from Frances
Mm-hmm.
that I've included in, and it kind of sums that up, what you're talking about there. So this is from a memoir, and she says, "This is where I feel angry with Sir Arthur Conan Doyle and Edward Gardner." Gardner was another member of the Theosophist Society. They never sought for any explanation of fairy life. It was enough that they could get the copyright for the photographs we took and later use them on world tours, lecturing on something neither they nor I knew anything about. If they had only suggested some way of finding out more about my little men and the fairies, who knows what might have been discovered.
Mm.
So that kind of sums her attitude up to everything. She was seeing them, she was interacting with them, but then Conan Doyle came in and and Gardner and were more interested in the photographs than what Francis was trying to tell them about the fairies.
Yeah, yeah. It was the evidence, wasn't it? It was very much the adult world of this is the evidence, and this is what we want to present to the world. It's the evidence, and not the experiences of the interaction. I mean, I took a different road to you, with I'm still writing it. I'm going to say that under. I'm sorry, Simon. I'm I'm finishing up. I'm finishing up what I'm writing. But I took a different slant, and I'm looking. I've been looking at Cottingley now, and it's what does it mean? You know, what does the physical place mean within Britain, within history, and within culture? And looking at it from the perspective of, you know, there are other magical fairy places around about the country here that have regained or retained their magic, and unfortunately Cottingley hasn't. And I was looking into why that has happened. Do we have a responsibility for those places? You know, do we have a responsibility for the upkeep of those places, if you like, within our cultural history? And the wider question of, you know, what does it really matter? Does it really matter? You know, if we lose these places, what does it matter? You know, which is,
Yep.
for me, that sucker punches me, that question every time. It's like, of course it bloody matters, but really,
Yep.
truly, in the great scheme of things, does it matter? So, yeah, I'm still waiting to submit mine, when I'm a bit more confident that it's all shaped up, ship shape. And Neil, you sent yours off like a good student.
Done and dusted well before the deadline. Yeah, no problem whatsoever.
This is how the tables have turned, let me tell you, viewers. Honestly, it's usually me who streets the Hare, got it in, you know, apple on the, you know, the professor's desk and all that. And Neil's usually scrabbling around the night before and write something extremely wonderful, let me tell you, within the last wee hours, where I've been working on it for months. We've flipped. The tables have flipped. Anyway, without giving too much trade secrets away about who we are and our personality traits. um, so I think Simon was looking to get that published out in the summer, wasn't he? Is he
Yes.
looking?
Yep.
He usually kind of cracks them out pretty quick. I don't know how he does it. Honestly, I don't
I
think.
don't.
I don't think he sleeps. I
Yeah.
genuinely don't think he sleeps.
Yeah. No, he is amazing. And maybe when it comes out in the summer, we'll do a special edition.
I think
Um,
we've got to get him back anyway for the fairy census to discuss that. So I think we'll probably have him back in between times anyway. We'll see if we can
Oh, I'm
persuade
sure.
him.
I'm sure he'll be up for that, and we might be able to tap into one of the other authors in the book who, you know, we know them all, so
Yeah.
we'll be able to get maybe one or two of them on and just talk Cottingley, because I think everyone's coming from slightly different directions on this,
Yes.
and so it will be interesting to see how it comes together as a whole.
It certainly will. It'd be interesting actually to have a bit of a round table with quite a few of us on Zoom. I don't know how that would work out. We'd all have to have a spoon when we want to speak, else it would be quite awkward.
Yeah, that's the thing about you watch these podcasts where there's sort of 7 or 8 people, and it's always everyone trying to talk over each other, and it never seems to quite work, does it? So
No,
you need to maybe be a little bit
we could all have
careful about that.
wands. We'll all have wands, and then if you stick your wand up, it means you want to talk.
And if everyone's if everyone's putting their wand up at the same time.
You can only speak when the chair says, "Oh, no, here we go. This is the teacher thing, isn't it? You can only speak when the teacher says you can speak."
Anyway,
Right.
we'll sort something out for Cottingley in a little bit more detail, but you know, this tonight we just give you
Yeah.
a taste of what's coming up.
What's to come?
Anyone interested in that particular case.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Well, I'm certainly pleased to be back. Although I felt a little bit rusty, so I do apologise to everybody. Yeah, on the a little on the rusty side, but it is great to be back. And thank you again to everybody who sent messages just to check that neither of us were buried under a patio somewhere, um, or something worse had happened to us in the meantime. Yeah, it was just technical stuff going off, as you can imagine. So if anybody's got any suggestions of future guests, or if you would like to be a future guest on Hare in the Hawthorn, then please get in touch. we are now more settled with the technology, more settled in general to be able to start putting some dates in the diary and leading forward into this new season. That was a terrible American accent, Kate. Come on.
Yeah, yeah.
I
It's
think we'll leave that there. I'm not even going to
yeah.
try that again. Bless. Any last words
No,
before
just
we
that
go?
it's no, just that it is great to be back, and we promise not to leave it for what has it been, 3 months, isn't it?
3 months. That's the longest we've left it.
Yeah, well, I shouldn't say we will promise that, because as you say,
We
we
promise
might.
within our means, you know.
Yeah, yeah. As
Yeah.
far as we are able, we will certainly be doing more podcasts through the spring and summer of 2024. So great to be back and looking forward to doing more.
Yeah. Lovely. Right. We'll see you very, very soon.
Cheers, everyone.